The government has announced an $11.5 million support package for communities affected by Cyclone Gabrielle and recent flooding.
Meanwhile, Auckland is bracing as Cyclone Gabrielle tracks south. The city came to a sudden stop today, with flights and trains cancelled, schools and businesses closed, and many back working from home. Alice Wilkins reports.
There were shades of lockdown for Aucklanders today as the city ground to a COVID-like halt. But this time the threat isn't invisible or silent. It's an atmospheric force and it's starting to make a proper entrance.
The impacts are going to be heavy rain, gale force winds with gusts in excess of 100 kilometres an hour possible, and as well as storm surge.
As the city began to prepare today, Dominion Road's eateries were surrounded in sandbags and tarpaulins. Many of these restaurants have flooded twice in the last 2 weeks, and now they're concerned it will happen all over again.
We're worried about tonight, so we'll prepare something to stop the water coming in the store.
At Auckland Airport, 400 flights were cancelled today, disrupting around 45,000 travellers. A small number of international flights were able to operate this morning, but all domestic flights, both in and out of Auckland, were called off.
At this stage, it's looking like tomorrow, at some point, we may get up and running again.
As Aucklanders cleared out the supermarket shelves in a race to gather survival supplies.
Which loaf of bread do you guys want?
Food pack preparations were underway at community hubs in South Auckland, visited by the Minister for Auckland, Michael Wood, while the chef at the City Mission stayed overnight last night to ensure breakfast was cooked.
If it's going to be a bad night, then I'll just stay again, and just to make sure someone's in here in the morning to get it going.
Met Service says high-intensity falls are likely to impact only pockets of Auckland, but with so much land damage already.
Exacerbating the slips is something that, given our saturated region, we expect to see.
And those in Titirangi know all too well about bracing for existing slips to get worse.
People have gone early, like there's hardly anyone on the street. They've left.
The first one was really bad, but this one I'm not too sure will be as bad, but at least we're prepared for it anyway.
As Auckland readies itself for the peak of the cyclone to hit overnight.
Well, OK, Alice, what can Aucklanders expect from the storm tonight?
Well, Mike, the rain is starting to pick up now. Both Met Service and NIWA, though, identifying the early hours of the morning, around 2 a.m, the high tide mark for Auckland as a potential period of risk. They say if we're going to see storm surge, if we're going to see coastal inundation in Auckland from this cyclone, that will be the time that it hits. Auckland Transport also advising motorists to stay away from coastal and low-lying roads like Tamaki Drive.
Alice, speaking of rail lines and transport, rail lines are closed throughout the North Island.
Yes, rail has been closed across Auckland today, but it's now going to be extended, that cancellation of rail extended until tomorrow afternoon at the very earliest. There are also some fresh rail closures across other parts of the North Island for Napier, Taranaki and Palmerston North South.
Alice, tēnā koe.
Well, the weather is intensifying in West Auckland, where the ground is already sodden from the last big storm. Nick Trubridge is in Titirangi. Nick, what's happening where you are?
Hi, how are you? Well, look, it's really starting to pick up out here in Titirangi, Sam. I don't know if you can see it from Nick's shot, but the rain is really starting to come sideways. The wind is intensifying. Obviously, the biggest issue is going to be the next few hours in Auckland as this weather starts to pick up. Of course, people are very afraid about what night will bring, particularly with all the slips in the area. This view here, well, normally you would be able to see Auckland. Obviously, you can't see that at all this evening. We've been driving around this road. Scenic Drive in Titirangi is where we are. Multiple trees down along the road. Just a little way behind me there is a gigantic slip, about 50 metres. Locals very concerned that that is getting worse. In fact, saying that they believe this road should be down to one lane already. As I say, the telling part of the storm for Auckland is going to be the next few hours as we get into nightfall. Speaking to locals around Titirangi today, many of them perched on the top of slips, and the hope is, of course, that they do not get any worse. But certainly testing times ahead for Auckland, Sam, as this hurricane really starts to roll in and take hold of the city.
A nervous night ahead, I'm sure. Nick Trubridge there, live from Titirangi. Well, on Auckland's North Shore, waves crashed over seawalls.
Residents told Michael Morra the power of the storm is like nothing they've seen before.
A front row seat for the storm with unexpected consequences. What were you told from your teachers today? Just no school?
Yeah, basically. I think there's no school tomorrow as well. Oh, yeah.
And have you seen anything like this before?
No, never. Definitely not.
Marcus Marshall had his mum nearby and said he was taking precautions. You staying safe though?
Yeah. I'm holding on to the bench.
Further along the coast at Murray's Bay, another local embraced Gabrielle's offerings head on.
Yeah, normally go bombing off the wharf, but no good for doing that today. Too much wood, too much crap in the water.
Really coming in now, right?
It sure was.
But the message from fire and USAR crews, who were busy dismantling an unsafe water tower in Milford today, was to stay home.
I understand the interest in seeing what's happening because it is quite different, but the safest thing to do is stay at home, leave the streets clear so that we can perform our job safely.
At Browns Bay, the storm brought in tons of debris. The beach here is normally calm and it's still 50 minutes away from high tide, but already the waves whipped up by the storm going over the seawall and the water is threatening to inundate homes.
The sea keep coming. Probably walk, throughout to my house.
Have you seen anything like this before?
No, never. First time.
How long have you lived here for?
I stay here around 30 years.
He and his wife were also dealing with having no power. So far, the worst of the cyclone's impact on Auckland has been the high winds, with power outages to 16,000 homes across the Auckland region. Another dealing with power cuts was Dalip Augusta, who only moved to New Zealand 6 months ago. What are you eating?
Only bread and jam.
No power at all?
Yeah, that's why I came here. I just want to check whether I ought to buy barbecue stove or not.
A barbecue could be necessary. Vector's warned it could be time-consuming getting everyone back online. Michael Morra, Newshub.